G'day you mob, Pete here, and this is another episode of Aussie English, the number one place for anyone and everyone wanting to learn Australian English. So today I have a Goss episode for you where I sit down with my old man, my father, Ian Smisson, and we talk about the week's news, whether locally down under here in Australia or non-locally overseas in other parts of the world. Okay, and we sometimes also talk about whatever comes to mind, right? If we can think of something interesting to share with you guys related to us or Australia, we also talk about that in the Goss. So these episodes are specifically designed to try and give you content about many different topics where we're obviously speaking in English and there are multiple people having a natural and spontaneous conversation in English. So it is particularly good to improve your listening skills. In order to complement that though, I really recommend that you join the podcast membership or the academy membership at aussieenglish.com.au, where you will get access to the full transcripts of these episodes, the PDFs, the downloads, and you can also use the online PDF reader to read and listen at the same time. Okay, so if you really want to improve your listening skills fast, get the transcript, listen and read at the same time, keep practicing, and that is the quickest way to level up your English. Anyway, I've been rabbiting on a bit. I've been talking a bit. Let's just get into this episode, guys. Smack the bird, and let's get into it. Dad, what's going on?
Hang on, snap.
He's just having a
He's
drink.
caught me in the middle of a slurp.
I'll open my drink.
Getting rid of the drips off the drink.
Yeah, no, sorry, guys.
Yeah. You pressed go too quickly.
This thought occurred to me while I had a quick toilet break.
There's nothing good ever comes.
Hopefully it's all right. I thought we could do an episode on chatting about how to make small talk. It's one of those interesting things.
How to make
you
small
make
talk.
it, you don't do it.
Yeah, to do small
You
talk.
create it.
Yeah, it's immediate tangent. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting use of those of how we use different words in English-speaking countries differently.
Yes.
We say different from. Americans say different than.
You know what annoys me?
Different to.
Yeah.
Is the other one, and none of them is incorrect. But
Well, it just settles. I guess
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like evolution, right? Where a local population settles on a certain way of doing something or evolves a certain trait that's unique to them, and another population settles on something else. We could talk about obviously language too, but something that always blows my mind is make a mistake, right? Is it make a mistake?
yeah, make a mistake rather than do a mistake.
No,
Or-
sorry, not that.
Yeah, I
Make
made
a
mistake.
decision.
Oh, make a decision.
Versus take a decision.
Yeah.
Take a decision sounds so weird to me, to my ears, and that would make me think that I am used to hearing make a decision. You need to make a decision. Make a decision.
This
Make
is one
a
of these
decision.
things where my editor brain, not that I've ever been a formally trained editor, but my editor brain is, there's actually a single word that means that. You don't need to use
Choose.
it. No, choose or decide.
Yeah.
You can even use the same derivative. Like, you don't need to make a decision, you just decide.
Yes.
It's we create superfluous language by trying to make it sound more sophisticated, and it becomes the semi-sophisticated version becomes the expected term, and it doesn't make sense.
This is one of those weird things that I notice on the news in particular, usually from politicians, and I even think I can. It was what was the female Premier of New South Wales called again? Gladys Berejiklian.
Yeah.
I remember her saying this. It was one of those moments that sticks out. She would always be like, "We've taken the decision. We've decided to take the decision to, do this, do that, implement this." And I remember thinking, like, why do I always hear this on the news from politicians and not in person? I never.
You don't hear normal people,
as
whatever
far
that
as
means.
I can
I just
remember-
did air quotes then for those who are...
As far as I can recall, anytime I talk to quote unquote people, normal people in the street or whatever, I hear them say make a decision or, those sorts of things. But there are some things that for whatever reason, I don't know if politicians do it because they're trying to sound more intellectual or more intelligent, or it is a certain way of saying it that is frequent elsewhere in the country or in other dialects.
I think
Americans say take a decision much more frequently than we do.
I think the things like take a decision, and you talk about
Where are you taking
politicians, it becomes that sort of subculture. It becomes common usage in subculture. Police speak is another good one. You know, a Caucasian male. You mean a white man?
Yeah. No, he's from Caucasus. Yeah. He's from the Caucasus Islands.
Exactly. You don't a male.
No one is going to criticise you for
male
saying a white
is not
male.
a noun. It is an adjective. A male what? You mean a male human? There's a word for that. Man. Or boy. Or be more specific.
Yeah.
So I think there are those sort of things. But the make a decision, take a decision. I find it bizarre because make a decision makes sense to me. Because make a decision means you are trying to create something.
Yeah. Well,
Take a decision
means right?
Take a decision means there's some predetermined options here. I'm going to
choose
take one.
Yeah, I'm going to take one of these away. I'm going to take the food from the restaurant. I'm going to take this
which is
decision.
actually accurate in politics, I suppose, because it's do we do this or don't we?
These people made the decisions, and we decided
now we've got to decide which
one
one to take. Yeah.
But it seems
it is
I always
bizarre.
notice politicians and people on the news doing it, but in like informal everyday language, I don't really hear people saying we have to take a decision. Take a decision. You need to take. What do you want to eat for dinner? Take a decision. It's like no one would say that.
I know.
No one would say that. And another thing I remember was it ScoMo, Scott Morrison, saying we've had a lot of learnings.
Learnings
COVID.
Learnings has become
And you were like,
it's become
what
those
the
things
hell?
that go again. Learning is a verb.
What to learn? Yeah.
It is not a noun.
We've had a lot of learnings, and not only that, you could say we've had. I would understand saying we've had a lot of learning.
We have
a lot
learned
of learning
a lot. A lot of learning took
taken
place. It's still using it as a verb, but you don't do learnings.
No, a lot of learning is the gerund, right? It's a noun in that case, but you wouldn't pluralize it. And so, there was one learning, and then we had another learning, and then another one.
I know.
It's an immeasurable noun.
Yes.
There's been a lot of learning.
There were 7 sheeps.
But that was weird. I remember that happening with ScoMo, and I think it would have been one interview that he had, and then all of a sudden it was parroted by loads of other politicians, and then also by the reporters and the journalists repeating back to, okay, what learnings did you have after this, in an interview or whatever, and you're like, oh my God, this is how it begins. It's just literally, there was one,
And see,
he just had a brain fart. And said,
no, he didn't have a brain fart. He was trying to be trendy.
Yeah.
Some of that shit just drives me nuts. The transformation of word types. Can you loan me something? No. Loan is a noun. If you mean, can I lend you something? That's a verb. Yes, I can.
You'll be loaning it from me. I'll be lending it to you.
Yeah.
You'll be
Can you send
borrowing
me
it.
the invite? No. I will invite you to something by sending you an invitation.
You're being pedantic. Though,
I am being pedantic, and my darling friend Wendy, whom I love dearly, and knows far more about language than I do.
She wrote the For Dummies English grammar book, right?
Australian English Grammar for Dummies. She would just look at me and go, "You're right, but language evolves. Get over it."
Yeah.
And I don't mind language evolving by people inventing new words or new uses for words and those sort of things. But when there's a perfectly good word that is a derivative of the same word you're trying to use, just use the right one.
But that's the funny thing about language. I guess it's not about being efficient. It's about communication. And if you take a longer way of doing it, or in a more intelligent way of doing it, or a simpler way of doing it, it doesn't
use the
really
one
matter.
that's established. It's lazy. That's the thing that I don't like.
Otherwise,
It's
if
lazy.
that were the case, we would have one language that ever evolved, and everyone would speak it exactly the same way, and you would only have a single word for everything. And I think, ironically, someone like yourself, who is intelligent, probably appreciates having multiple options.
I do, but I don't mind people creating new words. What I object to is using a word that sort of sounds right, but it's not the right word. When there's a perfectly good one, it is just as easy to use. And in fact, everybody has always used it.
I couldn't care less.
I could care less. That's the one that grates me most.
That's the one that gets you.
I had more arguments with my American friends and relatives about that one.
I could care less.
I could care less. Everybody could.
Yeah. There's a few of those, right?
I know.
One that I had an interesting question about, and it's one of those things.
With pause, we will get on to small talk, but this is small talk.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Was the fact that we say "aren't I" instead of
"am I not"?
"Amped I"?
I say "am I not"?
But yeah, I know. But we don't have the
I'm a
contraction of
pedantic
"am"
asshole.
and "not" together.
Yeah, am I not? We don't have the contraction.
No,
yes.
but you don't have
am
not I.
Am
There's
not
no
I.
amped.
Yeah, aren't I?
Yeah,
Aren't
we would
we?
say aren't I going as well?
And it's aren't we? Yeah.
Yeah, but you can
Yeah.
aren't I is
but
the
it's
correct.
that subjective first person pronoun and objective, the distinction between I and me also gets confused all the time. And you hear it particularly in North American
Who's
television.
going? He and I. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it should be he and yeah, who's going? Yeah.
Me and him.
He and I are going. Who
is going?
For?
Me and him.
He and I. No, it's for he and me.
No,
right?
him and me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that confusion of pronouns. And again, that one I understand because it just becomes common usage and it's lazy and so on. And we all understand. We know I and me mean exactly the same thing. They are just two different words used in different grammatical structures to be the same thing.
So they're some of the words that are left over from cases in English, right? Where you have the pronoun
subjective
change
and
the way that it's spelt and it's said, depending on what its grammatical role is.
And me actually comes from moi.
Well, they'd both
the
be
same,
coming from the original
from the Latin, whatever it was, but yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, I love those sorts of things. It is one of those funny things when I think you first learn a language, the first language you start learning, you
learn it formally.
Well, you look at it and you're kind of like, why are all these exceptions? Why are all these weird,
you mean your native language?
Inefficient way of doing? No, when you're learning a foreign language for the first time, and you're kind of looking at it through the lens
look at
of
formally and go,
function.
why do we do that?
Yeah, and you just have to start getting used to the fact that things aren't necessarily
and then you go and
as
listen to a
efficient as they
native
could
speaker
be.
of that, and they don't use formal language at all.
I know. Well, and Australians, it would be interesting to know more about. I imagine someone studied it, but to know more about dialects of English, or I guess nations that speak a certain language, and how their use of the language differs from one another in terms of formality or not. Like, are Australians more informal on average than Americans?
But even
is that
within,
just a trope?
Within countries, like Australia has very little accent difference across the country. There are
there's a diversity,
different cadences and things.
It's not geographic the same way that it is in, say, Britain.
Yeah, or in the United States, which isn't quite as bad. Britain's like Cornwall and Yorkshire. I reckon you could put a Yorkshireman and a Cornishman in the same room and get them to talk to each other. They wouldn't understand a word they were saying. And they're both speaking English and they both live in the same country.
It's pretty bizarre, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Small talk.
Yeah, we can get on to small talk. So how can we make this useful for listeners? How do you start small talk conversations, and in what situations would you or would you not decide to instigate small talk?
Small talk among people who know each other, or small talk among people who don't?
You can do both.
Yeah. So, and don't is probably easier, particularly for your audience, who are more likely to be talking to and meeting people they don't know. You know, if you're a visitor to Australia or you're doing business in Australia or whatever, you're not friends with the people that you're talking to.
Travelling, all that sort of thing.
So that sort of, like, you're in a pub and the person sits down next to you and says, "G'day."
Yeah.
What's the next thing you say?
Well, and it probably differs
Other than
culturally. Certain cultures, I would imagine, would have different etiquette around when and when not to have small talk. So I imagine that Australians are probably friendlier than Americans with talking to people in public. Whereas perhaps, people in another country, say Japan or China or something, may be less likely to just walk up to complete strangers and try and have a conversation with them for the sake of it. They'd be like, well, what do you want? What are you doing? Are you trying to take something? My Estonian friends always had that thing of like, you get to Australia and everyone thinks you're like cold and a psychopath because you don't smile and look at people in the eyes and everything that people you don't know in the street.
Smile when you're walking down the street.
Yeah, and he's like, if you did that in Russia or Estonia or Sweden or whatever, they would just be like, they'll think you're a nut job. They'll be like, are you going to rape me? What are you doing? Like, and I remember Mart, my friend, saying when he came to Australia, it took him months to get used to just getting smiled at, but then also smiling at other people. And he was like, everyone thought I was a psycho to begin with, and then I kind of loosened up and became more open with my, expressing myself and my emotions and humour. And he's like, the funny thing was when I went home, everyone thought I was a psychopath because I was smiling at everyone and talking to people and being all like, I had to learn to be cold again.
So there is culture, and certainly within Australia, there is that culture that almost that everybody is worth at least greeting, acknowledging that they exist. So it would, it would almost be considered rude, using that example I just said. It would be almost considered rude if you're in a pub and you walk down, a person sitting at a bar and there's a stool next to it and you go and sit on the stool, of not acknowledging the other person.
Yeah.
You don't either the person who's already there turning and going, oh, g'day, or you arriving and say, oh, is this stool or, is this available? Or
you'd wonder what the threshold is for how chockers a place has to be, how full it has to be with people for you to get to the point where you would no longer do that, right? Because if you walked into a packed pub and there was an empty chair,
the only thing you'd say is somebody's
taken. Yeah, exactly. But you wouldn't be thinking, oh, fuck, I've got to have a conversation with this person next to me or else I'll seem like a dickhead.
You probably wouldn't.
But you wonder what the threshold is. I wonder if people have done those experiments where there's a pub and
there are 7 people in the pub.
Increase, at what point do people
nobody
stop
talk
making,
to each other?
Yeah, just stop making small talk. Yeah, exactly. At what point, if it was the other way around where we start with a packed pub and we start taking people out, at what point do strangers start having more conversations with one another because of that kind of again, if I walk into a store and there's only one person in there who's behind the counter, you're going to make eye contact with them and say, g'day, but if the store's full of people, you're not going to look at them and you will not
wave at everybody in the
hello everyone, hello I'm fellow shoppers.
But if there's one in there, you'd probably walk by and say, oh, g'day, how you going?
This is probably
and that's
good.
the other thing too, is that how you're going is not an invitation for a conversation.
Yes.
It is, and it's not saying don't respond, but you're not going to insult the other person if you don't.
Well, and the other person's going to seem like a psycho if they're like, well, actually, my mum's a bit crook at the moment and my dog died. Like, you'd be like, dude, I was just saying hello.
The answer is, yeah, good.
And you?
All right, how you going? Yeah.
But okay, so...
And you get, sorry, I got caught in that cycle the other day when I was driving around country Victoria and stopped at a general store place just to get a drink and always try and spend money in the local places where I'm going, and walked in and the woman said, g'day, how you going? I said, good, how are you? She said, I'm all right, how are you? And I looked at her and she went,
good, how are you?
And she went, and just smiled and laughed. Yeah. She realised that we'd got tied into the automatic response.
Yeah. There's a few of those sorts of funny things that happen. I remember that happening in a restaurant where you would have those moments of it's like you haven't heard what they said. You were expecting to say, how are you? And you say, good, you too. But they've actually said, thanks or something, and you say, good, you too, and you'd be like, oh, fuck.
Well, there used to be
here's the bill, thanks, you too.
You're probably a little bit old to remember it. There was a skit comedy show.
Old to remember it, or you mean young?
Sorry, young. Yeah, I'm too old for you to remember that you're too young.
Have another Pepsi, Dad.
It is too old for you to remember. Mm-hmm. I was just contracting it. You understood what I meant. Actually, I didn't. There was this a gag that one of the characters used to use when somebody would say hello and she'd say, good, thanks.
Yeah.
So, because the expected thing is, how you going?
Oh, man. But so when would you make small talk with complete strangers? Can you think of situations? Like if you were at a station and you sat down next to someone, would you feel inclined to talk to them? Would you feel inclined to ignore them? What would be a socially acceptable situation where you would talk to, I don't know, I think we can just discuss those sorts of things.
Yeah, I know. Here's one for you. I went to my cardiologist's office 2 days ago to get a prescription, just a prescription
name
renewal.
Dropper.
Yeah, my cardiologist, that's hardly a name dropper. Yeah. I went to my financial advisor, my travel agent, to book the next. No, so I was in a lift, an elevator, coming back down from there, and normally it's 5 floors, so you don't have to wait very long to get to the bottom to go to leave. So I just pressed ground and brain dead, and then it stopped, and it had only gone down 1 floor, so we're on 4th floor. And a woman with a pram came in. I went, I was about to walk out, thinking her brain goes, all right, I'm out time.
Yep.
And she came in, and you do what you do with a woman with a pram. First thing you do is you look at the baby and go, oh, that's very cute, which it was. It was a very cute baby.
It was a dog, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. It was a baby.
It was an actual baby.
It was an actual baby, and it was
wasn't
cute.
one of those crazy old women with a pram and a little dog in there.
Pomeranian sitting up there.
Your baby's
you're fucking ugly. And that's instant small talk. Mm-hmm. Anybody with a baby is instant small talk because And I don't know whether it is part of our normal psyche that wants to communicate with people. And if the woman with the dog,
it's funny.
It didn't matter if it was a baby or a dog or a cat or an elephant.
To pause you there, it's you're looking for something about which you can have a conversation.
You're looking for an excuse to say something that isn't going to be considered to be not so much rude, but
there's a woman sitting next to you and you just turn around and say,
go,
hello.
Cute baby. I don't have a baby.
That's it.
Exactly. So it becomes a bit psychotic then. But
it's interesting, if you're just...
When you've got it's almost like an implied invitation in your personal thing in your own brain that just says, it's okay to say something.
There's something obvious that you can talk about. But if you did it with someone, like, again, I would feel like this. If I just started talking with a young, attractive woman and there was no obvious reason for me to start a conversation with them, that's where I would be like, that's weird, right? Yeah. Like, if there's no... She's wearing a T-shirt of a band that I really like, or she's got a small child and I've got a small child.
So, yes, the triggers can be...
Hi, where do you live?
Yeah, but hi, where do you live is probably okay, if you're in a pub and you hear them talking and, you come from Melbourne, you know, and then it's that trigger. Whereas, in an elevator, when there's just the two of you alone, hi, where do you come from?
What's your address?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you walking alone home?
Walking alone home
tonight? Yeah. But I was thinking, like I had one the other day where this is a funny situation. This guy came out of daycare and he was with his kids, and he was wearing a Meshuggah shirt. And Meshuggah's a band, a really heavy metal band. And I didn't even say anything. I just looked at him and went, and he knew exactly what song I was talking about. And he was like, bleed. And we started having a chat. I'm like, I love that, man. That song was so good.
And that's the trigger.
Yeah.
That's that trigger of you've got something in common. And babies and dogs are a good example.
Yeah.
They're in common with humanity. That everybody has either had children, been a child, well, everybody's been a child, knows someone with babies. You've got something to talk about, even if it's 3 seconds, and the same thing with a dog.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the children thing, because I find that, again, the older I get as a male, the more I find it awkward starting conversations with women, young women in particular, because of the assumption that you want something from them, right?
Yeah.
Like there's that... I've become more aware of that the older I am, that the younger the woman compared to my age now, the weirder it feels. Like you get that vibe from them of like, why are you talking to me? What do you want? You're too old, so...
Yeah, see, whereas you get to my age...
and you're totally disarmed.
But that apparent threat has just dissolved. Now it's just, here's the grandpa, So
the point I'm trying to get to, I guess, is that now I find when I'm alone, out and about, but I see women with children... I can still start those sorts of conversations because, one, I'm genuinely interested in how they're going and how they're surviving. If there's a reason to have a talk, like we're stuck in a lift or something and they've got a small baby, I'll be like, how are you surviving?
Yeah.
Like,
Sleeping?
are you getting enough sleep? Yeah, all that sort of stuff. And they'll be like, because I've got 2 kids. Blah. And it's so funny how as soon as you mention you have children, they effectively just end up disarmed and want to chat.
Because then it's a common conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. But it is one of these things that I would never have thought about prior to having kids, how much that's just having that in common with them. Yeah. And so I found myself having those sorts of endless conversations with women with kids when you're out and about. And obviously it's something that I wouldn't have given a shit about prior to having kids. No. How are you going?
Yeah. How are you getting any sleep? And they go, what's it got to do with you?
Yeah, exactly. I don't have kids, but I'm curious. Yeah. But so that is one of those funny things I end up... swimming is the perfect example. Taking the kids to swimming.
Oh, yeah. And
I'm always sitting around other parents.
Parents who are... The only reason they're there is because their kids are at swimming.
Yeah, but I guess it's one of these good situations to talk about because I would have people listening to the podcast being like, so I don't know how to make small talk and make friends with people that are interacting with my kids, right? People who are also parents of kids there. And I think one of those things is just trying to openly have conversations with people you don't necessarily know for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And like putting hooks in the water. It's sort of like dating, right? Finding good friends. Well, you just have to meet as many people as possible. Interact with them.
Initial dates are the perfect example of small talk.
Yeah.
Because you've got nothing else to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason that we call it small talk is because we're talking about things that don't matter.
Yeah. For the sake of just communicating.
Yeah.
But and it's one of those things that I noticed that really what I'm doing, it's like, yeah, as you say, like dating. When you have small talk, I'm looking for a reason to connect with someone else to then explore that further, like as a friendship or something, right? So whenever I've gone to swimming, usually when I'm chatting to different parents about different things, what I'm really, at the end of the day, you're trying to get to, is there a connection I can make with this other person? Do they have similar hobbies, similar interests? Are their kids really friendly and interested in my kids? You know, like if you go to a playground and you see your kid playing with another kid and they're really having a good time and they seem to really like one another, one, that would cause me to go and have small talk with the parents. Like, hey, check it out. You know, what's your kid's name?
That's that situational thing.
But then two, I would be trying to develop that into a friendship potentially for the sake of my kids, let alone the sake of, you know, myself having more friends. But it is difficult.
But sometimes there's no intent as such, other than just acknowledging another human being.
Well, I've had those moments, right, where I've been on a train. This was when I used to travel up and down from Geelong going to Melbourne Uni. And there was this one time I remember chatting to this young woman on there. We're probably about the same age. And just really clicking with her, but in like a platonic friendship kind of way. And it just didn't, like, I didn't get anything from her. Like, I didn't get a number, didn't get a number, but we just had a really good conversation for the entire length of the... and
it can be for 10 seconds or an hour.
Well, and it was interesting because I think we were probably talking about things that we wouldn't have otherwise spoken to strangers about.
No harm, no foul if you don't know the person.
But it was one of those things where looking back, I'm like, that's the point you want to, like, looking for a relationship or not, that is when you know, okay, try and make the connection last longer. Get a number, get a name, get something, because you clearly get along well. And obviously put something out there being like, look, I had a great time chatting. Do you want to catch up another time and just have a chat again? Because, you know, I seem to be able to just connect with you. What's your number? What's your name? Or whatever. And then try and see where it goes. I think that's one of those keys. You have to put yourself out there when you try and make friends.
Yeah, again, if that's the intent. But but even if it's not, even if it's just that, hey, I want to practice my English.
Yeah. You know? Well, and that's one of those disarming things.
And the other thing too, if you're a visitor, and whatever those circumstances are, to a place, whether it be a country or a town that you've never been to, or you've never been to this suburb before, sometimes it's just, what can I find out about this place?
And I think to go from there, the reason that works so well is because you're asking for help or advice. Yes. And people generally want to be helpful.
You're handing the responsibility for the conversation over to the other person.
So yeah, like
people
if
want
I
to be helpful.
If I was in Brazil and I, you know, spoke better Portuguese, but got on a train or something and was sitting around people that I wanted to connect with or have a conversation with, I think that would be one of those things of like, hey, I'm not from here.
I'm here. So what's
do you guys have any suggestions for places to go, things to see, where to avoid, what to do, and then see where it goes. But
what's the best place to eat? Yeah, that's a common one that I use when you go and you stay at a hotel or whatever, and particularly a hotel that doesn't have its own dining room, so they're not having to give you advice in conflict with their own commercial interest. Is where's the best place to eat? And you'll always find someone who tells you these quirky little places that you'd never would have found. You know, so there are some advantages to that sort of small talk, but that's not the situational or the spontaneous small talk. That's the small talk when you actually want something. Yeah. You know, this is give me information. It can end up being those other things. Yeah. But it can be give me information. Yeah, I need to know the answer to this. And it's some of them it's open ended, like what's the best place to eat. Sometimes it can be just how do I go up and ask somebody how to get to the bus stop?
It's funny. I remember watching a video when I was in that language learning sort of stage at uni, like really passionate about learning different languages. And there was a guy, I think he was in Sweden, learning Swedish, and he's like, I was having a lot of trouble trying to tell the time and getting good at it. So what I did was go out and just kept asking people what the time was and just walking around the street. And he's like, if anyone had stopped and just watched me, they would have thought I was fucking psycho. But he was like...
the first 12 times somebody told you what the time was, you didn't believe them? You go,
look, I've got a fetish.
Time is a democracy.
I've got a fetish, and I just like being told the time. That's how I get self-gratification.
I'll keep asking until I get the answer I want.
But he would just do that, where he would go out and try and have conversations with strangers, but by doing something innocuous like that, where he was asking for directions all the time, or for, where's this place?
People
what's this
genuinely
thing? People would give him
engage.
And he would get reps in effectively, right, with different people who had different accents and different pronunciation, different ages, and he was like, within a day, I could tell the time pretty well. And so that's one of those things. I've said that before to people like listening, but if you are traveling in particular and encountering loads of different people all the time, find reasons or questions to be asking them, right? Just come up with random shit, of like, where's this place? Have you seen this place? What's the time? Do you know how to get here? And just have loads of different interactions like that, even if it's 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And it'll also probably help you build confidence, because you just stop caring about, I don't want to open my mouth and talk, or,
And I look, genuinely, and there's always individual cases that are going to break the norm, but generally in Australia, people are happy to help.
Yeah, just carry a map and open it. And
in Melbourne.
Yeah, look lost.
In Melbourne. And you guarantee you, the second person who walks past you will go, you need help?
Yeah.
Do it in Sydney and it'll be get out of the bloody way.
It is interesting how I think to be as efficient and effective at learning a language as possible and be able to have these interactions, you do need to learn a little bit about human behaviour and the fact that, we are social creatures who want to be helpful and want to interact with other people. And so you have to find a way of manipulate is probably the wrong kind of word, but kind of leverage that.
Exploit people's natural tendencies. Yeah. And Australians, I think, are more naturally friendly and openly helpful. They're actually not necessarily any more helpful, but they want to be.
Yeah.
And so you will find, if you ask somebody in the street, walk up to anybody in the street and just say, oh, look, how do I find Burke Street if you're in Melbourne? People will tell you.
You got a phone?
Yeah. And they'll go out of their way to help you.
Yeah.
And look, this is not a racist thing, but I remember being in Hong Kong and asking people. That's the cultural thing.
This story came to my mind. I couldn't remember if it was you or not.
No, it was
I was
me.
going to bring it up.
How do I get to here? And you show them the name. And that's the thing. If particularly if you do not speak any English, now your audience is clearly not that, but or you don't speak the language. Like I speak absolutely no. That's Cantonese in Hong Kong, but no Mandarin or Cantonese. And so if you need to go somewhere, you have it written down for you in their language. So, so you just point at it. And the natural reaction of people in Hong Kong was just they point down the street. You go, thank you, and off you go.
It's like pinball, though.
Yeah, and then you get to the next one, and they send you back the other. And you suddenly realise there's a cultural thing here that they do not want to say they don't know.
Yeah, they want to save face.
So they just give you an answer. Whereas in Australia, you'll find if you go, how do I get to Burke Street?
Just point up.
No idea, mate.
That's it. You're on your own. Good luck.
But what that person will probably do is ask the next person, go, hey, mate.
Yeah,
this guy needs to know how to get to Burke Street.
That's so reminiscent of scenes from Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah,
where I think they have those. They kind of show that cultural thing of when he goes. He's looking for the. It's actually in America, isn't it? He's looking for his love interest, right? The woman, and he goes into the subway in the US, and he's like there's a huge crowd and he's trying to get the attention of the woman and he has to yell to these different guys and they have to communicate with one another.
Yeah. And it's kind of like he just gets up and walks across the crowd.
Like a sheepdog, a cattle dog. Yeah, exactly. So are there situations where you think you would avoid small talk? I mean, it's hard to kind of spontaneously pull these out, right?
Myself, possibly. And in Australia, probably not.
I think you have to kind of gauge the other person. But
there are certainly, I'm just thinking about travelling. Certainly in the US, I've been to plenty of places where I wouldn't talk to people.
As in...
Where
as in you don't feel safe?
You're walking down the back streets of a city that you don't know, and you're not going to ask the first person, how do I get to sort of question.
Surely, though, was it you who telling me the story about a group of people who went into a restaurant and they didn't realise it was like a black-only kind of restaurant?
It wasn't me. No.
And apparently they they went into this restaurant and it was kind of, like it's not illegal for white people to eat there, but
it was
for whatever
well
reason,
known that
it was like, this is where black people have dinner. And so they looked and saw a white family come in and were like, what the F are these people doing here? But they sat down and ordered some food. And I think as soon as they saw them eating with the knife and fork around the other way, from how Americans
foreigners.
would, they were like, oh, foreigners, you guys are fine, and then they were like, yeah, we're Australian.
Yeah.
And then they dealt with it. But it was funny that those kind of like social thing, those cues, as soon as they sort of communicated the fact that they were foreigners, they were like, oh, it's sweet, you're all good. So I reckon like you could probably just be like, g'day, mate, excuse me. Excuse me, mate.
Yeah, you can turn on the Australian accent. This bloody idiot, what does he know? Look, very rarely, certainly in Australia, it'd be very rare that I wouldn't. There are some times where you look at it and you go, no, it would just be embarrassing for the other person. Often that you talking about approaching young women.
Yeah.
The
gym and women.
Oh,
it's one of those.
No.
Leave them alone.
Oh, exactly.
Leave Brittany alone.
Yeah.
That would be one of them. That was at any age as a male. I would just be like, I always just felt so creeped out by the other guys who would use the gym as somewhere to look for.
It's a pickup joint.
Yeah, exactly. To look for women. And you would just be like, dude, like just leave them. Don't even look at them. Just like leave them alone. Let them get in, get out, be thankful they're here at all, and then just go about your day.
Yeah.
But that would be one like, I think it would be, I would be waiting for women at a gym to be making small talk with me before I would be not instigating in those kinds of situations because because there's the underlying thing of they're going to be like, this dude's a creep, this guy's a creep, why is he talking to me? Like, I've got a boyfriend. All I said was hello. Got a boyfriend?
Yeah.
Got a boyfriend? Don't hurt me. So that's one of those situations.
Leave me alone.
Yeah, but I can't think of any others really. But yeah, no. I think the key is to just really be interested. Like if you have a reason
you've
to
said
ask
that
questions.
The dating thing is don't try and be interesting, try and be interested.
Yeah, well, and that's not my line, but that's that idea, yeah. And I think language learning in particular is useful, and just friendships in general. If you're there the whole time trying to impress by telling everyone about you, how good you are, everything like that, it
becomes tedious.
Yeah, and people are going to lose interest pretty quickly. Whereas if you're asking questions, you can be talking just as much. You don't have to slow down how much you're talking, but when you're talking about them or showing an interest or curiosity in them as opposed to trying to impress them with yourself, that is a huge thing for developing friendships, right? Because you make people feel better by...
If you're interested in them.
Yeah, and I did that so well when I was dating that there were a few times where I left and I was like, I can't even remember that person's name. Like, because all I did was just ask questions about their life, and they just didn't stop talking. And they didn't ask, they didn't even ask me my name. They didn't even, it was that kind of thing of, they didn't even stop to breathe. And I was like, I use these powers too well. Like, I need to give them some chance to reciprocate with questions next time.
Yeah, and that's. So that was why I was talking. I asked first about: are we talking about small talk with people we know, or are we talking about small talk with strangers?
Okay, so we've covered strangers.
We've covered the strangers. The small talk with people that you know is very situationally dependent. Is it a date?
Yeah.
If it's not a date, could it become a date? So is there a romantic or potentially romantic overtone to it? It's very different from sitting with friends around a dinner table.
Or family at an event or something.
And having, small talk.
I think I would almost find that harder at times. It depends on the person too, because it is one of those things where you go to family events and if you're forced to have small talk with people you don't particularly like, it's so much more laborious.
Going to a party.
And tiresome.
I told this story many times. You probably heard it. I went to a friend's 50th birthday party years ago. And I got stuck talking to a guy who spent half an hour, I'm not joking, half an hour talking about plane spotting. Mm-hmm. And that he would drive out to, there's a spot next to Melbourne Airport and Tullamarine Airport, Melbourne's international airport, where you can park under the flight zone. Mm-hmm. So when they're coming in and taking off, depending which way the wind is going, they're either doing one or the other. And he used to go out there and record the registration numbers of the planes as they were going past. And you go, All right, that's cool. That's the end of that conversation, right? Yeah. That's taken 15 seconds.
He violated that rule.
He did. He just talked for half an hour.
Yeah, he didn't show any interest in you or what you do.
And I showed no interest in what he was doing, and all I was trying to do was get away, and he had a captive audience, and he was going to go for it.
I would just get to a point where I'd be like, look, I think I've shat my pants. Yeah. I'm going to have to excuse myself.
Go and clean up.
I think I pooed myself.
Can you help me?
Yeah. Can we continue this conversation in the toilets? That's it. I would probably.
No, I actually remember another friend who was at that party. I forced her to rescue me by doing basically that without the shat.
You just suddenly grab your stomach and you're like, oh,
and went, hello. How are you going? And just wandered off.
Then
tried to avoid him for the rest of the night.
Oh no! Excuse me, we're in.
Yeah, in. Yeah. Like, I haven't. We've only got 3/4 of the way through this story.
There's more to come.
There's more.
Yeah. There was a Boeing 7. No.
Exactly. So yes, there is small talk and there is painfully pointless talk.
It's funny though, right? Because you have those interactions.
That's just being able to read the other person.
Yeah, but that's what I was going to say. You have those interactions with people where they clearly just don't get it, and you kind of like look at my face and read the expression.
I know, and there's so many comedians who have done that gag about the nerdy guy who just wants to tell you about how the little left-hand screw on that little thing goes in, and you need a very particular screwdriver to it, and that screwdriver only comes from a little town in the Czech Republic. And when I went to the factory there, and you just God, eyes roll on the back of your head and going, really? You lost me at screw.
Let me decide the journey.
I mentioned camera. No. Oh, you're a photographer.
What did you say
Let me tell you about my little... Yeah.
How are you? That's what I said. How are you?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure Ricky Gervais has done jokes on that.
Yeah.
But, I can't remember where I was going to go with the convo.
Don't know.
I had some really funny things to say.
Conversation, small talk with that. But if you're learning a language... and not just learning the language formally, but just learning how people talk. Just sometimes sitting and listening to that sort of thing is...
There's another reason to be listening, right? That's layered on top. When you understand the language pretty well, perfectly well, you just have to enjoy the story, and that's all you've got. You don't get to sit there and enjoy the fact that you're speaking English. You're sort of like... But yes, read the room. Read the room. That's one of them. But it is hard when you've got... I have that same thing. I would rather be talking to strangers, I think, at least initially, than some family members that we have, where I just be like, please, dear God, do not let us be in the same room alone. Because then you have that pressure of looking at each other like, and they'll be like, so how's the family? And you'll be like, oh, fuck.
Good.
That's good.
The one-word answers. Yes, no, good, 6.
It used to be that thing too at work.
Just rotate through them. Yes, no, good,
I'm pretty sure I remember this. When I was at the museum, you would be going to the lift to go down a few floors to be able to go to the cafe to get a coffee, and there would be certain people in the department that you would sometimes see coming to the lift at the same time as you, and there'd be no one else there, and you'd be like...
turn around and go the other way.
You just keep walking. You're like, fuck it, I'll get the stairs.
I'm going to the library.
They would look at you like, oh, are you getting coffee too? And you're like, nah, taking a shit.
And then by the time... And then you've raced down and got your coffee and they're sitting there.
You've got to sneak through the exhibits. Just like, and they'd be like, that was a quick shit. Yeah, I know. It's funny, isn't it? Those kind of... unspoken, when people just don't get it and they can't read the room, those sorts of interactions. I was watching something recently about a comedian, and the story was there were 4 women that were up the front of this guy's show, and he was watching them, and only one of them wasn't laughing. The rest were, and he was just like, what's the fuck wrong with it? Like, my jokes are funny, everyone else is laughing, why aren't you laughing? And then he was like, I think I worked it out. And it's like, you're the friend that keeps getting dragged along, but they stopped liking you 20 years ago, right? and everyone laughed except her, and she got up and stormed out. And he was like, the guy telling the story was like, wow, he just got it straight away and knew the dynamic. Yeah. And then to follow it up was like, good, leave, no one fucking likes you. You're just like, oh my God.
Well, the art of stand-up comedy.
That's brutal.
Telling people the truth they don't want to hear.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we were meant to be talking about small talk, but we got sidetracked.
Sidetracked to stand-up comedy.
into big talk. We've been talking for 42 minutes.
Well, there's a lot of small talk.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that will be helpful, but hopefully it is. I guess the takeaway is try and find a reason to connect with people. If you can, if they're wearing something that you see and you're like, oh, that's my band, or they've got a skateboard and you like skating, or there's some reason to be like, you hear them talking. One thing that I always notice is if I hear an accent, or
I do it all the time.
I'm just like, and I don't know what it is in particular. I'll be like, is that an accent? Whereabouts are you from? And it's just because I'm interested and I want to know.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
And people are always interested in telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there are certain people who get offended. Usually, I've found though,
only if you try and pick the accent and you're wrong.
Yeah, well, there's that. But the people that I know who would get offended by that are usually they've got different coloured skin, but they're native speakers of English.
Yes.
And they're from, say,
from an African country.
Wherever, and they have migrated here a long time ago, and they get upset at the very fact that you think they speak another language. Yeah, and they'll get pissed off about it.
Yeah.
But generally, when the people who actually do speak a foreign language, it's always great conversations, especially, and I'm sure that a lot of the people listening to this will know what I'm like. If they're in the academy and they come to my calls every month, we almost always end up talking about their language, their culture, their history, their country, because I'm just so interested in it.
But it's something to talk about.
You just have to walk up to the average Aussie and just be like,
where do you come from?
Yeah, what's the best part about being Australian? What part sucks? If you could kill one Australian, who would it be? Like, if you come up with some random question. If there was one person in Australia that you would drop from a very high height in a helicopter, who would it be?
Maybe don't use that one.
That's it.
At least not the first question.
If you could wish one person was attacked by a crocodile in Northern Australia, which politician would it be? Anyway, all right, we've ranted enough.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
See you guys.
See ya.